Fresh hardware.
This project begins over at the thickness planer to clean up the front and back sides of this maple pallet wood that I got for free several months ago. Then over at the table saw I can clean up the remaining two sides and make everything nice and square. Then I can run these pieces vertically through the table saw with the blade cutting about a third of the way through on both sides. Then bring this over to the bandsaw and finish ripping these down to about 3/4 inches thick. These are going to go through the planer after that and get reduced down to their final size of 1/2 inch. Then it's back over to the table saw where I can rip both sides with very light passes on the table saw to joint the edges. After that, over at the chop saw, I can cut down all these pieces to their rough lengths, leaving a little bit extra on the ends to get rid of snipe and any impurities. Now it's time for the glue up, where I'm simply just using butt joints. There's no need for any kind of biscuit joint or anything like that. This will be plenty strong enough on its own with just the glue. With the glue being set overnight, I can remove all the clamps and start removing all the high spots of the glue with a sharp chisel. With the biggest chunks of glue now removed, I can give a light pass on the front and back through the thickness planer to remove the remainder of the glue marks. Now that all the panels are made up, it's time to rip everything down to its final width over at the table saw, and then after that I can bring it over to the chop saw and rip everything down to its final length. Just a reminder that if you want to build this yourself, I do have a free set of plans on my website for download. I can next move my miter saw to the 22.5 degree position and cut off the two side pieces. Then over at the table saw, I set my bevel to 22.5 degrees as we're going to rip one edge of the front and the lid. So this next step is completely optional. I then set up my CNC to carve out the word male in the front. As you can see, I do know how to spell the word. Haha, I got you with the thumbnail. And this is just going to be carved out with a 45 degree V-groove bit, and I set this up using Fusion and the engrave function. Then I can go ahead and remove this from the CNC table, sand it down a little bit. This will dry overnight and then be sanded down to leave a nice crisp edge so you can clearly see the words. The last step before assembly is to lay everything out and sand it up to 220 grit, as it's going to be impossible to sand this on the inside, or at very least very tedious to do it by hand if I didn't do this now. So for assembly, everything is just held together with some glue and 1-inch pin nails for alignment. You can forego the pin nails if you don't like the look of the really tiny holes. I don't mind them, so I went ahead, as this makes the glue up process so much easier and quicker. Now that the mailbox is all glued together except for the lid, I can go ahead and using my angle grinder cut off a piece of piano hinge, and then using a file to remove some of the sharp burrs on the edges. To install this hinge, I first lay it out on the mailbox itself, and using a self-centering drill bit, drill out all the holes and hold it in place with 2 screws at the end, then come back and drill the remaining holes. To help with drawing the holes in the lid, I first take off the hinge and then attach the scrap piece of hinge, as this kind of holds the lid against it so it's not going to slip off as I'm drilling on this funky angle. The screws I used for attaching the hinge are number 6 1/2-inch flathead screws, and with that the mailbox is complete and can now be disassembled and sanded down to 240 grit on all the exterior edges. I'm going to be applying 2 coats of water-based polyurethane semi-gloss to the entire mailbox inside and out, sanding between the first and second coat. After letting the polyurethane cure for about 48 hours, I could then go ahead and reinstall the hinge and the lid. The last thing to do before calling this project complete is to go ahead and take the old mailbox and mark the existing mounting holes, as I don't want to drill new holes in my cement brick, as this will get mounted on my house. And with that, the project is complete.
just like Christmas.